Hello and welcome to Cinema Eclectica, part of the Geek Show podcast network. We are the Geek Show's dedicated film podcast. I'm Graham, and this week I've been joined by...
Aidan!
Indeed.
Yes. Haven't been on for
Been a while.
Yeah, been a long time for me. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. But good to have you back anyway. And what a week you've chosen to come back. Was there any rationale behind this?
I was thinking about this because I was supposed to be on the Uncut Gems show, but due to family circumstances, I couldn't be on. So here I am, glide past Uncut Gems, glide past the personal history of David Copperfield, glide past Parasite, and straight into the film that we're about to talk about today. Huzzah.
Yes. The film we are about to talk about, that we are about to talk about, too many about, today is Sonic the Hedgehog. And because of that, we asked our question of the week. And it was, what video games do you think should be made or remade if it didn't go well the first time and you're a glutton for punishment, into a film? Now, this is a region that I know absolutely nothing about.
Yep.
I'm
I'm familiar with them, I suppose. Yeah.
Good, solid choice to do a question a week based on something I know literally nothing about. So before we get into it, mine is, I don't know, Tetris. Who cares?
Space Invaders.
Space Invaders. Although I fear Adam Sandler did try that.
Oh, God, yeah, there's pixels, isn't there? I forgot that. I forgot that's based on a... Yeah.
But yes, here's some of the ones we got on social media. Rob Simpson, I think, deserves credit for quickly and efficiently undermining the premise of the question, saying, games are an interactive medium, and to turn an interactive story into a passive one is difficult. The proof is in the many, many puddings. What studios should do is look for the properties that they can expand upon rather than fail to adapt, if that makes sense. And then he also says Dead Space could work. But yeah, it is true. The problem with adapting video games into a film is that a video game is a non-linear story dependent on player choice, whereas a film is one linear story that isn't.
Yeah, I think Shigeru Miyamoto, I think one of the co-founders of Nintendo, said something about video game movies being the role of the director in a video game is normally the player because they can choose any path they want. Or something like that. So it does make sense in that regard, and hence why a lot of video game adaptations, suck so much.
Yeah. Yeah, let's not pussyfoot around it. They really do. Some from Facebook, Ashley Lane says the Portal games, which is a fairly obvious choice. He says it's fairly obvious, not me. I don't know if it is or it isn't. But he says, done right, the film would be both hilarious and psychologically horrific. I think I'm right in saying Guillermo del Toro is a big Portal fan, isn't he?
Yeah, I remember hearing something about that. Yeah. Well, to be fair, I mean, he has his fingers in more than one pie because he also, likes comic books an awful lot. So he's the world's biggest dork, and I love him.
Yes. Al Stover says cannon fodder with a publicity campaign based on the original game's marketing campaign. Martin Chow says Gal Gun. And Bao Bai comes up with, I think, my favourite answer of the week. Breath of the Wild. I mean, any Legend of Zelda stuff, to be honest. I want more than what I see on Pornhub. Oh.
Okay.
In order to answer your next question, no, I have not researched this answer. I'm taking it on trust.
Rule 34. There we go.
Yes. So I mean, we've already established I don't have an answer for this. Do you, Aidan?
Oh, on top of the Shigeru Miyamoto answer that I just played before, I think sometimes, video games I don't think need adaptations in the first place, depending on, the subtext. I think that way about Red Dead Redemption, simply because I think, the movie is already... Because it also, video games take elements from movies anyway, when you look at cutscenes like nowadays.
Yeah.
But I think one that I would enjoy, God of War, firstly, because personally, I'm playing through
Right.
the new one at the moment, and I'm pretty much enjoying it. Um, and I can't really think of another answer, to be honest.
I suppose when you say Red Dead Redemption, that does open up another issue, which is that a lot of video games use elements from movies to
Yeah,
sort
yeah.
of ground the game in some observable kind of reality, which isn't really a problem. You know, the pitch of something like Red Dead Redemption is what if you could actually go into Unforgiven and be in that world, whereas in a movie it might just end up looking like Unforgiven.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It goes back to that point. Yeah.
So, all of this is a roundabout way to say that our film of the week is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Still surreal saying that. Oh.
Which, listeners, if you haven't listened to last week's show, firstly do that because it's a very good show. But Mark Harrison said that his hairdresser was listening to a radio advert for this movie and said, Sonic the Hedgehog, how the hell are they going to make a film about that? And I mean, we could stop the review there, couldn't we?
We could, indeed.
But how they have made a movie about that is that it's about, now forgive me if I get the mythos wrong, because my main understanding of Sonic the Hedgehog is what's in this movie.
Mm,
But he comes from some sort of fantasy land of talking animals. He is very fast. That's his thing. And he is not safe there for no adequate reason.
I can't remember
So
the
he
reason to that. Yeah.
it's very thin, isn't it? It's sort of like, oh, he's very fast, and people will fear his powers because
Mm.
fastness is scary. So, anyway, you use a magic ring to go to Earth, and that's about it.
Yeah, it very thinly ties it in because there's also the reason why the magic rings don't take him to another place right then and there, like when he causes like oh the kickstarting event to set this plot into motion where he says, right, take
Mm,
me to the magic, mushroom land or whatever it is. And, he tries to go
yeah,
through there, but he can't because immediately you hear, oh no, they're outside. The bad guys are outside. What do I do? I'll have to wait. And then you just think, well, no, you can still go through it.
yeah. Going through it seems like a much better course of action than, oh man, I can't use my magic getaway portal because then they'll hear me getting away.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
Many questions about that, to be honest. Yes. Um, it's the first film by Jeff Fowler, who is an effects artist who's won many awards for his effects work. And of
I,
course, the effects for this
I think he
were
I think he worked with Tim Miller a bit for Deadpool. I think they did like a short animation for Blur Studio.
right.
I looked into his like resume, see what he actually did, but he worked with Tim Miller a little bit.
Tim Miller does have a production credit on this, and a few people have been saying that it's got a kind of Deadpool-y tone. I mean, PG certificate, obviously, but
Mm,
still.
yeah.
But yeah, the effects on this were initially they kind of horrified people, didn't they, when that first trailer came out?
Yeah, in a world with that and cats, it's just a matter of what have we become as a society? Why do we live like this? Because I remember when that Sonic trailer came out, I think I was driving back from a job interview at the time, and then I heard like
And you
Jeremy.
crashed your car.
Yeah, I nearly crashed my car. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Legitimately, that nearly happened. I nearly drove myself into a roundabout when Jeremy Vine announced, "Yeah, there's a trailer to the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. We're getting a Sonic movie now." I was just like,
Why was
"What?
this on Jeremy Vine?
I don't know."
You can't get middle-aged people to shout down the telephone at Sonic the Hedgehog. What was he thinking of?
And yeah, my first reaction to the trailer is, "Good bloody god! What on earth is that? Kill it with fire."
I mean, apart from the effects, my big takeaway from the trailer, which I have to say the effects were corrected, but this was not, is that the whole thing has this kind of Canon Films energy. You remember when Canon used to buy up stuff like Masters of the Universe and all of these big, expansive science fiction and fantasy projects, and then look at them and say, huh, we don't have the budget for a whole movie set on Eternia. Why don't we take the characters to New Jersey instead? Kids love New Jersey.
Yeah. And there's also the thing of James Marsden's character operating in a place called Green Hills, which is a direct
Mm.
take on, I think, the first Zone and the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, which is also called Green Hill. And I just think,
Oh,
oh,
right.
oh, guys, come on, that's not subtle in the slightest.
I mean, it sailed over my head, but I'm not the target market.
Yeah, I'm slightly familiar with the Sonic games. I don't play them anymore, but I used to as a kid.
Mm. Yeah, because a lot of it revolves around Marsden as this kind of small town Montana cop who comes into custody of Sonic, and they go on the run to San Francisco for, I think, reasonably well set up reasons. And they are pursued by. Now, help me out with a bit of Sonic lore. Is Dr. Robotnik always a government scientist?
Not that I'm familiar with. No, in the games he's mostly independent. In fact,
Right.
in the games he because he doesn't really affiliate with someone else, so he often like crafts robots for his own leisure. So a lot of
Mm.
them, he doesn't operate for the government, which is a new thing for this movie.
Because it's got this performance by Jim Carrey as Robotnik that I saw this several hours ago, and I'm still sort of sat thinking, was it good?
Hmm, yeah, I did get a similar vibe because I mean, I don't know what our feelings on Jim Carrey is in particular, to be honest. I mean, I'm rather, meh, which I think is a
I've got yeah,
yeah.
I've got to admit I'm pretty strongly negative, and if you'd have told young me around the time that Ace Ventura came out that this guy would be the guy from the 90s who's still a massive box office star 20, 25 years later,
Hmm.
I'd have been appalled. I'd have been absolutely horrified.
Yeah.
But I sort of think that even though I find his mugging as unfunny as ever, there's something about seeing it in this kind of context that isn't as annoying as I usually find it.
No, I didn't. I wouldn't say it's grating. I mean, smug
Mm,
and mugging, yes. Especially when he does like because of course Jim Carrey's also known for his how he approaches like his body as well, so he gets a lot of expression out of
mm.
that. So and there's sometimes he like jerks around like a robot where you do think, well, the Eggman in the games doesn't normally opt like that, but you know what? If I'm allowed to let it slide because sometimes it's Jim Carrey doing Jim Carrey, really.
Yeah. And I mean, I think he works well as a villain. I think, family movie villain is a niche that Jim Carrey slots pretty well into. And Jim Carrey is intimidating. I mean, he doesn't want kids to get life saving vaccines. That's pretty alarming.
Hmm.
Um, but, but yeah, I can't quite sort of fault that bit. And I think there were a few bits in it that I found kind of above the level I was expecting. Some of the effects work in particular, some of the bits where Sonic sort of dismantles a fight scene while it's all frozen around him, which is
Yeah,
obvious
yeah,
kind of it's very sort of second-hand Matrix, very similar to the Quicksilver scenes from the
yes,
X-Men movies,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, it's inventive and it works, I think.
Hmm. There's certain things that I like about it. I mean, I do like the reason for Sonic to express his frustration, like, where he spins really, really fast around like the baseball field.
Mm,
And because he thinks he's lonely all that time, so he just like spins round and round in circles. That I liked actually quite a bit. Because I think it's like decent way to express something.
I mean, that did open up a big problem to me because in this baseball sequence, he's playing baseball with himself because, as you say, he's bored and he's lonely,
Hmm.
and he pitches the ball and then he outruns the ball and hits the ball. And okay, so far I'm on board.
Yeah.
Then he outruns the ball again, so he goes out to catch it. But while this is happening, he's also trying to score a home run. And the implication of this scene is that Sonic can run faster than he can run. I realise that's a tautology, but that's it. He's a faster runner than he is a runner.
Uh, I'm lost.
It's the bewildering world of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. He can outrun himself running.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the thing that was most of a drag on it for me is that I just found it so unfunny.
Hmm. Yeah. I think it kind of gets loses like steam within like the first, I don't know, 5-10 minutes or so, because it just feels like a
Mm,
repetitive cycle of like a buddy road trip movie. Which, to be fair, I mean, I don't have a problem with that because it's not like the case
mm.
with the Super Mario Brothers movie where they decided to reimagine like reimagine it as Blade Runner. Because yes,
Yes,
stomping on mushrooms equals Rutger Hauer saying giving his famous Tears in the Rain speech in the end of Blade Runner. That makes perfect sense. What were you talking about?
of course. Yes. Super Mario Brothers was basically just cyberpunk. Everyone knows that.
So it's not like the most misguided adaptation I've ever seen in my life. So, I'm
Yes.
open for, it going that direction at least. I think the problem is it could have, I mean, especially when, when you've got all these sequences that drag on, it doesn't really give the humor
Mm.
much flavor to breathe, really.
Because we talked about it being Deadpool like, and it does have. I always think in Deadpool there are basically two breeds of joke. There's pop culture reference, and there's a weird thing happens, and someone goes, "Well, that was weird," and there you go. Those are your jokes,
Hmm.
and it's the same here. I don't know where a creature who has only just come to Earth gets this encyclopedic knowledge of pop culture from.
Yeah, yeah.
That was quite odd.
Hmm. Yeah, actually, no, I was confused about that because I think Sonic in the same barroom fight before you were mentioning before, he references ZZ Top, and
Yeah.
I was getting a bit. Hold on, would Sonic have the knowledge to understand that?
Yes.
That seems a bit of I don't know.
We're really analysing the logical consistency of this not very good movie based on a video game.
Hmm.
Um, because I think it struggles to establish what level of reality it's meant to work on itself. And I have a theory about why that is.
Hmm.
Which is that when they took it away and redesigned it, because as we said in the first trailer, they had this basically photorealistic Sonic that weirded people out.
Yeah.
And they took it away and they made it more cartoony, and the design is nicer now. It does work better,
Hmm.
you know. But there are some moments in this that attempt to gain a sort of pathos that I can only imagine working with a more photorealistic character. There is a bit where a bomb explodes behind Sonic, and there is this moment which is meant to be quite tragic where we think he's dead,
Hmm.
but it doesn't work because the design is on a kind of Looney Tunes level, on a kind of Incredibles level now. You just expect this guy to have a bomb go off near him, stand up, wipe the soot off his face, bang, he's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So in a similar way, it could have operated better, maybe as like a 3D animated movie, perhaps.
Mm. Oh, absolutely, yeah, and that is the case with so many of these things. I mean, Cats would have worked much better as a fully animated movie.
I,
I
I,
don't.
I think honestly, the Disney remakes have a similar problem where it
Yeah,
would have worked much better if it was like updated into like a 3D animated movie, how they make like Frozen or Moana.
yeah, yeah. If they weren't embarrassed about the idea of being animations, I mean, The Lion King is technically a 3D animated movie, but it wants you to think you're watching Planet
Mm,
Earth.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. A bit more sort of bounce, a bit more expressiveness with the characters would just, yeah, I would get rid of this kind of annoying tone that too many things seem to have recently.
Yeah. What did you think about the product placement at the end, where there's a ticket to Olive Garden?
I thought the product placement was obnoxious throughout, and I'm not the sort of person who is normally bothered by this. It genuinely, product placement usually sails completely over my head because we live in a world where people talk about brands, people see brands in shop windows and places. It's part of life. But every time anyone mentions a brand in this, whether it's Amazon or Olive Garden or some Airbnb type website I'd never heard of, it just lands with a big, heavy "we paid for this" thud.
Yeah. Maybe that helped help the recosts of the design.
Yeah, maybe. It's like we work half our effects team to death, but we are getting this sweet discount from Olive Garden. God, I hope it was worth it. So yeah, I don't know. My only half joking sort of note about it was when I came out was this movie would have worked a lot better without the super fast blue hedgehog character.
Right, yeah.
Because I think a lot of the other stuff in it is, I mean, it's not great, but it's basically likable. I think James Marsden's a solid, underrated actor. He's, witty and
Mm.
likable. I think, the small town setting is quite sort of cute and nicely drawn. It's got Tika Sumpter in it. I'm a big fan of Tika Sumpter. She doesn't have enough to do, but she's there.
What else is she in?
Tika Sumpter was in The Old Man and the Gun.
Oh god, yeah, I forgot she was in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's worth keeping an eye on. She seems like she's going to do pretty great things. But I liked them. I liked that couple. I liked their town. Then you're reminded that the whole thing is going to end up with a fairly irritating blue hedgehog
Mm.
having a fight against Jim Carrey. And
Yeah.
oh no, not this.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I do have a problem with Sonic in the games as well because he has a very, very, very dickhead persona there as well,
Yeah,
and I think that's why I've turned away from the games since being like this hip, trying to be hip, cool kid. Thinking that
yeah.
oh yeah, this is absolutely great. You got to go fast, got to go fast, got to go fast, and then as soon as I get into like my my miserable early adult years, I just think, what the hell was I thinking?
Oh, but there were bits in it where, as a sort of newcomer to this whole world, I was just thinking, "Oh boy, you can tell this was a '90s character, can't you? Because everything Sonic does is so rad and
they,
extreme."
they
And it's like,
in the first trailer, they used Coolio's "Gangster's Paradise" as the backing music,
I'd forgotten that. Yes, they did.
and I just think, how funny would it be if they hadn't used that and used "Amish Paradise" by Weird Al Yankovic? I kept thinking about that, and every time I just think it's a delicious thought.
But it's one of those things. I don't know what trailers you got for this, but we got a thing for, I think it was like a DreamWorks cartoon about monster wrestlers,
Hmm.
and it ended with this absolutely protracted Dirty Dancing reference. And then this, you've got, as you say, ZZ Top references. You've got a kind of 90s attitude to it. You've got clips from Speed and the Naked Gun. And I'm just watching this and thinking, can people stop inflicting their 80s childhood on like people who were born after Barack Obama became president?
Hmm.
Can we just let kids have a childhood that's theirs rather than do this to them?
Yeah, yeah. Which I think why I quite like, studios like Leica as well, who,
Yeah,
they do take references. I mean, if you look at Paranorman, it takes like, stuff's like references up to like John Carpenter to, I don't know, like Scooby Doo, say for example. But it,
But it's not the gag isn't dependent on that, is it? So
yeah,
if you don't know those things, there's still enough to laugh at.
yeah, yeah. Or like Paddington using takedowns against UK far right politicians.
Uh, that's different. Paddington is a serious political tract, not a children's movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's why I love it.
But yeah, I found a few bits in it worked, but mostly I found it a dud experience,
Hmm.
and I accept that it's not meant for me.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind it. It did. I didn't find it as irritating as what I thought it was going to be. And saying that is like saying, "This is the fine art of video game movies," because as we established before, most of them aren't very good at all.
No, no, that's very true. Do we have any recommendations for things to watch alongside this?
Not that I can think of, to be honest. Other than like the bajillion 90s movies it references. So,
Yes, yeah. I had one, and every time I can make this feature into like a film and a supporting short, I'm always very happy with that
mm,
because it just has a good old fashioned feel. There is this film released about sort of 4 or 5 years ago by two directors called Paul Story and Chris Lee.
I
I don't know if they've done anything
I
else.
recognise the names. Yeah.
Maybe they have. Maybe they have. Um, but the film I know them for is called The Hedgehog, and it's about a young autistic boy in a Sonic the Hedgehog onesie and red shoes who goes around mimicking Sonic around his like unremarkable suburb.
Mm,
And there is a real kind of poignancy and sweetness to it. It's only about 7 minutes long, so absolutely no reason why you couldn't watch it. And it did remind me of there's this fantastic review of it on Letterboxd by J.W. Hendricks, who says completely accurately, this is like what the Sonic the Hedgehog movie would be like if they got Lynn Ramsey to direct
oh
it.
wow. Okay.
It's a really lovely film about a British suburban childhood, which is not something that you regularly see on screen. I mean, most British films are either about aristocrats or people living in desperate poverty.
Mm,
And I just watched this and I thought, I can't remember seeing anything that got the middle bit as right as this.
yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for checking out one of the podcasts in our merry little family. We really do appreciate it. Podcasts aren't all we do. We're also making strides into the world of video. If you like what you've heard and want more, then head on over to YouTube and search for The Geek Show. On our channel, we have video game and low budget tech reviews, video game chatter in Press X, animation discussions in Keyframe, movie visual essays in Shortcuts, needlessly nerdy lists with Listomania, interviews from our travels, and much, much more. The future's bright, and who knows what else it holds. So don't forget to search for The Geek Show, subscribe, and click that notification bell to stay up to date.
So, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, you can donate to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Geek Show. We're on Facebook, just search for The Geek Show, and on Twitter at TGS_The Geek Show. And don't forget to look for our YouTube channel, where we're already putting loads of exciting new shows on.
Mm. Why did I say there?
But because it was right.
I forgot we were doing. Sorry.
So yes, if you do go to thegeekshow.co.uk, you can read some exclusive written reviews for films that we do not cover on this podcast. Rob Simpson has a review up of a film that's in cinemas right now, Takashi Miike's 103rd film, First Love.
Right. I've heard. Yeah, I've heard he quite likes this a lot, doesn't he? So
Yeah, he was very impressed by it. as well as just generally impressed by the fact that Takashi Miike has not worked himself to death yet, which I think we're all impressed by.
Honestly, the day he dies, there'll be like 10 million bloody Takashi Miike films.
Yeah. We've also got a review of The Son of the Sheikh by Mark Cunliffe. Son of the Sheikh is the final film starring silent movie legend Rudolph Valentino, and that's out on Eureka now.
That's the first time I heard that film, actually, when Eureka announced it. I mean, I wasn't, I didn't hear much about it beforehand, so...
Yeah, I am far from a Valentino expert. I just know him like as a legendary romantic lead. So yeah, that's interesting. We've also got a huge review that I am currently working on and should, with any luck, be up either before this podcast goes out or not too long afterwards. But I am working on a review of Criterion's 6-film box set of the work of Jacques Demy, which is
Ooh.
amazing. It's got Lola, Bay of Angels, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, The Young Girls of Rochefort, Donkey Skin, and A Room in Town, and it's honestly pretty staggering.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds deeply appetizing.
I mean, the extras are sensational. There is a whole Agnes Varda documentary as an extra on the Young Girls of Rochefort disc.
Blimey, okay. Now I'm
Yeah,
just picturing a Jacques Demy version of Sonic the Hedgehog, and that's
that would be, well, it would be something. I mean, if he can make Donkey Skin work, which is one of the weirdest pitches for a movie you've ever heard, then could happen.
Mm.
But yes, we should go onwards to a bit of off the shelf, I think.
Should I kick off first with...
Yeah.
Because I've got a release through from Montage Pictures, who we've covered a bit in the past. I mean, we've done, I think, pretty much everything they've released up until this point. So I've got a Danish movie called Sons of Denmark, which is the feature debut film by a filmmaker called Ulla Salim. Came out, well, it got a general release last year through from Eureka, who has been pushing out a lot of Eastern European films. But this is set at 2025, actually. And it is after 1 year after a major bomb attack in Copenhagen. So in the first, 5 minutes of the film, you see this couple, flirting towards each other in, I believe, this small cafe. And then immediately, they say goodbye to each other as they go to work. But then as the young girl disappears into, the underground train station, so down the stairwell, you hear, this very, very faint, ticking noise. So indicating, like a bomb's going to go off. And then all of a sudden, it just hits you straight in the face, like a massive, bomb explosion has just happened, really. And it sets the tone almost immediately that this isn't really going to be much of a pretty watch, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's set 2025, as I was saying before, and at this point, a lot of ethnic tensions are running high. Recently, a new far-right group has been established called the National Movement in Denmark, headed by the absolutely, bastard, I would quite frankly say, Martin Nordahl, who's played by an actor who I'm not familiar with, but Ramos Bjerg, hope I'm pronouncing your name right, who is really stirring up a lot of hate in the system, often waving his fingers towards the immigrants are to blame for this, really. It's all the immigrants' fault. These really obviously vile speeches that you just want to deck him for. But then it quickly turns from Nordell, and we get set to two main characters. One called, I believe his name is the first lead character is called Zakaria. There we go, Zakaria. And then the other is played a person called Malik, who's more this police officer who has very much experience with this, and they often get imbued with the tensions that are going on. So often you will see elements that Salim has shown on the wall. One of the very first scenes we see in the movie is decapitated pigs' heads on the street, the streetway, and you see all these different peoples of different nationality just looking at this racist language that's on the wall by this, basically by people who just do not want their kind in Denmark, really.
Yeah.
Really quite bitter, horrible, writing on the walls. And we basically like see it from their points of view, really. Really how they interact at family life. Zakaria is often at home with his mother. They are experiencing a bit of I would say disengagement with each other because his mother is like expressing on like the radio, I am living in fear at all points, I hear what's happening in this country every day. Why on earth are you leaving for like this radical, um, Arabian Danish group that wants to put an end to all this chaos? You're costing your life on the
Mm.
line. Essentially, stuff like that. It's because I was looking at the liner notes to Sons of Denmark, and part of its influences that I'm guessing from the synopsis is that it's partly inspired by Jacques Audiard, of course, the famous French director who's behind Rustum Born, A Prophet, and more recently, The Sisters Brothers. And
Yeah.
the other is Martin Scorsese, which, I mean, I could cut. I'm two minds about the Martin Scorsese influence, because on the one hand, it feels more embedded towards Audiard's case, where often he
Mm.
lets like loose on like high tension environments, but also brings this sense of like upbringing towards them, I would say. Like when you look at something like scenes of like A Prophet with the lead character in like his prison cell doing like this very, almost like religious impediment, really, in some way. Like
Mm.
he's expressing his, vindictment to God. You do get the sense of like, him rising above like the grimness surrounding him, really. Stuff
Mm.
like that. I think it's more imbued towards him rather than Scorsese, because Scorsese is just as someone who loves the man to death. I do think well, no, actually, no, I do take that back, because you got to remember there's also like the religious movies as well, like Silence and
Of
yeah,
course. Yeah. Last Temptation and
I've
stuff like
I forgot
that.
about that. Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
director. What I mean, I'm in two minds about Sons of Denmark. Firstly, I do think it didn't quite work for me. I think part of the problem is
Mm.
that it did for me. It felt more like a box set drama rather than it did a film. If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Because and I appreciate the messages that Salim is trying to tackle with this, because obviously it's tackling with racial diversity, it's talking about all this thing. Because one, I don't get like there's a very few sparse scenes in between that don't really add up to the like dourness that he's currently displaying. I mean, there's a couple that do work. I mean, there's a scene where Zakaria, you know, he's driving along with his friend in the car, and then in a moment of silence on the radio you hear like The Whole World's Gone Nuts by a band that I've never heard called T-F2 or something, like after
Mm. Nope.
yeah, skimmed over my head completely. But then you just hear him like obviously soulfully singing along to the radio, and at the moment
Mm.
it's kind of like the chaos of the world compounded, really, that you do get this eerily bad sense of like danger to it. But it
Yeah.
strangely works, I think. I do quite like those little scenes like that. But overall, I did think I was felt a bit disengaged with it, to be honest with you. And I don't know whether that's just me not understanding like the Danish society, because you've also got to remember is that I think there's an awful lot of subtext to this that I'm not quite familiar with, because I'm not familiar with like how the Arabian Danish like culture is treated over in Denmark anyway. So I guess you
Mm.
have to suspend your disbelief quite thoroughly to engage with it. I mean,
Yeah.
because it's objectively a very well made film. It's just not a film that particularly wowed me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it sounds like it's partly a political thriller as well about this new party, and it can be sometimes a bit tough to watch
hmm.
political thrillers about a country whose political structure you don't actually know much about.
Yeah, I think that's precisely one of the problems I had with it, because there's certainly like good acting towards it. I mean, like I was saying before, the person who plays Martin Nordell, bleeming heck, I mean, if there's ever someone who I want to rightfully punch in the face, it's him, because he actually goes on the telly, who in this very like rancid speeches, like saying, while all the immigrants are taking like beating, raping our country, mum and dad are fighting in Parliament or something like that. That
Mm.
I do get. That is a very very like ghastly moment, because you do think, oh bloody hell, this is like very frightening, especially in the age that we live in, with people like Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, Bolsonaro running like these countries. You do get the sense of, okay, I can see where you're coming from there. Even though sometimes I do feel like his character is almost like a caricature in a way. Oddly enough, I think Sons of Denmark actually reminds me of the work of, I think, an Austrian director called Christian Petzold.
Oh, yes, yeah.
The filmmaker who recently he just did Transit, and Transit I had a very similar problem with. Simply because, it just takes its time. But even then, I think Transit does a much more interesting spin on it, because it's like a World War II story, but set in a very modern environment, which is very...
I've seen a few of Petzold's films. I've seen Phoenix, which I think is staggeringly good.
Yeah. It did remind me a lot of his work, to be honest with you. And you know what? Yeah, I can see where Salim is coming from. I think he does have promise as a filmmaker, actually. It's just that I think it's a film that, didn't particularly work for me. Did feel like it was a bit overlong, because it's about 2 hours long, and I did feel like it dragged its feet a little bit. But it's interesting enough. I'm willing to give it a free pass, because, Montage Pictures are one of these companies who like takes chances on like European cinema that aren't, outside the norm, films that are totally obscure that you would never have heard of beforehand. So appreciate.
Yeah, I admire that Montage are quite resistant to just buying up a number of films by big name auteurs and festival favourites. They really dig stuff up.
Yeah, but that's out now. Not a lot extras wise. I mean, it only comes with the trailer and a booklet, but I mean, I don't think that's a downvote in its favour anyway. If you want to add to your Montage Pictures collection, you're more than welcome to, But if it sounds interesting to you, go ahead and give it a shout.
Yeah. So, we've got a pre-recorded review coming up of another film that Eureka are handling. This time Mick is looking at their reissue of The Miracle Worker.
Yes, so this is The Miracle Worker, the 1962 Oscar-winning film based on a play by William Gibson and directed by Arthur Penn. Stars Anne Bancroft and Patty Duke, both of whom won Academy Awards for their performances. Bancroft plays Annie Sullivan, a 20-year-old teacher from Boston who's just regained her own sight and has special glasses to enable her own vision to be used. And she's summoned to the Keller household to act as governess and teacher to Helen Keller, 7-year-old, played by Patty Duke, who lives in basically a world of silence and darkness. She's unable to speak. She wasn't born deaf, dumb and blind. It's something that happens in infancy, but she isn't born that way. And it's quite a harrowing tale, really, because Bancroft, although she's the heroine of the piece and sort of like eventually manages to build a relationship with Keller, the way she does this is kind of cruel. Necessarily cruel, I think. And it's one of those films where you have to judge it by the time in which it's set rather than our own modern values. But the thing about it is, it's a difficult watch. The parents of Keller, Victor Jory as Captain Arthur Keller and Inga Svensson as Kate Keller, they've kind of pampered Helen a little bit because of her disability. So she has learnt to get away with murder. She is quite rude, for want of a better word. Quite almost feral and willful. And the brother, James Keller, played by Andrew Prine, is an advocate of sending her away to some kind of institution. And to be honest, at the time it's either the asylum or the Perkins School for the Blind who can help here. And it's from the latter that Bancroft's character, Annie Sullivan, hails. It is based on the actual life story of Anne Sullivan. and it's scarlet fever that takes away Helen's ability to see and hear. Of course, because it happens in infancy, the lack of hearing means that she's unable to speak. She's not dumb, she's just not able to speak. Now, when you watch this, you have to bear in mind that Ellen Keller wrote her autobiography, The Story of My Life, in 1902. So all the mention of asylums, sanatoriums, and schools for the blind are kind of based on cruelty. So that's the standards by which you must judge the action in this. I can see why Bancroft and Duke won their respective Oscars for this. They do both put in very powerful performances. Duke, in particular, although 15 years old at the time of playing a 7-year-old girl, she actually seems to be about 12, I would guess, when you see her. But certainly the mannerisms of a feral sort of 7-year-old come across. But there's a lot of physical punishment and discipline included in this, which can make for harrowing watching. Where I think it falls down, and it's not this film particularly that this is limited to, but films of around this time that are based on stage plays tend to feel like stage plays that have been filmed, if that makes sense. They're kind of static. You have the same sets. We don't have the advantage. It's almost like the camera's locked off in each scene. We do take advantage of the fact that, unlike a theatre audience, we can go outside. But there's very little in the way of panning shots or tilt or tracking shots. We follow the action, but it's within a very rigid sort of two-dimensional plane that we follow action around. That said, we do capture all the emotion. The music is stirring by Lawrence Rosenthal and underpins the tender moments that Sullivan has with Helen. It's a difficult watch, but it is rewarding. It is uplifting in the end. I mean, Victor Jory is the sort of 19th century southern colonel type landowner who's probably kinder to his servants, his black servants, than he is to Helen. Although he does come across as being harsh and cruel, again, you get this feeling that it's coming from a place of love, and it's just the way things were done at that time. Inga Svensson is she's kind of brilliant at being ineffectual as a mother in this circumstance. She, don't get me wrong, she's full of love and she's full of feeling for her daughter, but she sort of characterises that by spoiling her and letting her get away with murder and bad manners and all the rest of it. And it's I think it's Sullivan who uses her own experience of only being partially sighted that kind of breaks down by finding a way to communicate properly with Keller. She finds a way to break that down and actually break through and not tolerate the nonsense, and ultimately uses the touch, which is the only sense that they both have in common, to make a connection using hand signals and creating a world of communication for them to live in. As I say, it's powerful stuff, powerful enough that it's been remade several times. Once in 1979, where Patty Duke took on the Anne Bancroft role with Melissa Gilbert as Helen, and again in 2000 with Alison Elliott and Haley Kate Eisenberg in the lead roles. It's one of those films where the retelling can be modified for different audiences and modified for new audiences. But it is, as I say, a difficult watch and limited in its cinematography, having that stage prey feel. But other than that, The Miracle Worker is out now from Eureka with a fantastic high definition digital transfer in full 1080 high def. The print is crisp, it's clear, which again belies that lack of cinematic quality that makes you and almost enhances that feeling of you're watching a stage play through the lens of a camera. It includes an audio essay on the life of Anne Sullivan, and it also includes the full theatrical trailer. Bancroft shines. If you're a fan of Anne Bancroft's work, then this is absolutely a must-have in your collection, and is available now on Blu-ray.
So next week starts on Wednesday, which I imagine by the time you'll listen to this will be today, when The Call of the Wild is released, starring Harrison Ford and a big dog.
Yeah, I've seen TV spots to it. Yeah, I remember Willem Dafoe in promotion of The Lighthouse says he's working on a dog movie for Disney Plus or something. He was talking to Simon Mayo or something.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Willem Dafoe and a cute dog for Disney Plus. That's something.
Yeah.
Out on the more traditional Friday, we have a film whose title is bothering me in so many ways. Brahms, The Boy 2.
No, can't confirm on that.
I mean, is Brahms a scary name?
I don't even know what that is, to be honest with you. It's the first time I've heard about it.
It's a sequel to one of those things which was about a doll or something.
Oh, I don't know.
And I guess the doll must be called Brahms or something. But why Brahms? Why would you pick that? Anywho, we've also got something that I'm quite optimistic could be a bit of a return to form for Michael Winterbottom, who's been a bit wayward in recent years. But this is Greed, his apparently thinly veiled biopic of Sir Philip Green with Steve Coogan, David Mitchell, and Sophie Cookson.
Yeah. Haven't seen much Winterbottom. I will be honest, but yeah.
I mean, I think he is one of those directors where you think you could make films that were a lot better if you just slow down a bit. But when he hits, I think he's terrific.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore A Cock and Bull Story. I think that's a marvelous film, and he's got a few things in his back catalogue that are really, really solid.
Yeah.
We've got Like a Boss, which has Tiffany Haddish, Rose Byrne, and Salma Hayek, and I guess they're doing things in a boss-esque way. I don't know.
I don't know. Movies can be
Just bossing it.
Yeah, bossing it up.
And we've got Little Joe, which I'm very enthusiastic about. A very unexpected English language debut by the Austrian filmmaker Jessica Hausner, who normally makes very dark, very restrained satires, and who, for her English language debut, has chosen to cast Emily Beach and Ben Whishaw and Kerry Fox in a black comedy about people growing mind-altering psychic plants.
Yeah, that sounds.
The long pause is
That's
merited.
quite a pitch there.
Yes. But we're not doing any of these things next week, because next week it's our takeovers week, which is one of those deceptively simple ideas that we've taken ages to figure out the logistics of. But essentially every show on the network is taking over another show. We will be taking over 4Panel, the Geek Show's comic book show, whereas Literary Loitering, the Geek Show's arts and culture show, will be delivering the next episode of Cinema Eclectica. So until next week, when we will be the Literary Loitering crew, stay with us. It makes sense when you hear it.
L'Eclectica.
Litclectic, yeah. It's if the more you say it, the more it sounds like you're going to make a really unfortunate pronunciation ever. So we'll stop there. But until then, that's been your lot from Eclectica. I've been Graham,
And I've been Aidan.
and we'll see you next week.